Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're going to unpack something truly fundamental. We're looking at the invisible engine behind literally every single successful company you see around you. Today, we're diving into the architecture of business capital. We'll explore the precise mechanisms of how businesses fund their growth from the very beginning all the way up to massive scale. We're going to break down the exact strategies, the stark trade-offs, and the vital financial lifelines that take a simple idea scribbled on a napkin and transform it into a sprawling global enterprise. It's a fascinating journey, so get ready to take some notes.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to take a second and imagine your own ultimate dream business. Maybe it's a revolutionary tech platform, or, a chain of artisanal coffee shops, or even a cutting-edge manufacturing firm. You've got the vision, the passion, the perfect product. But there's a massive wall standing between your current reality and that dream, and that wall is capital. You really have to ask yourself this absolute foundational question. How exactly do businesses get the money they need to actually grow? Because let's face it, without fuel, even the best engine goes absolutely nowhere.
And the thing is, growth isn't just some abstract concept, right? It's made up of highly concrete and often very, very expensive steps. To scale up, you're going to need to buy machines, whether we're talking about heavy industrial equipment, fleets of delivery vehicles, or just high-end servers. You need to hire workers, bringing on specialized talent to build and sell your product. And eventually, you're going to want to open new branches or expand into entirely new markets. Reaching each and every one of these exciting milestones requires serious, dedicated capital. You just can't pay for a new factory with good intentions. So, where does that initial spark of funding actually come from?
Well, that brings us to our very first stage, starting up the foundation.
For the vast majority of entrepreneurs, the journey begins right here, with the owner's investment. It's exactly what it sounds like. Many small businesses, and honestly, many eventually massive businesses, begin simply by tapping into the founder's own personal savings. This is the classic sweat equity and bootstrapping phase. It's that money you've painstakingly saved from your day job, the nest egg you've built up, being poured directly into your new venture, just to buy that first piece of equipment or secure that tiny first office space.
But there's a massive tension at this stage. It's a very real psychological and financial balancing act. On one hand, using your own money means you retain 100% absolute full control. You answer to literally no one. You're the sole captain of the ship. But look at the other side of the scale. You are absorbing all the financial risk. If the business fails, it's your personal bank account that takes the hit. It's a heavy burden for sure, and it's the ultimate test of a founder's belief in their own idea.
Assuming you survive that initial startup phase and your business is operational, we move to the next chapter, internal finance, self-funding.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the core definition here. Internal finance is simply money the business already owns. The absolutely crucial point is that there's no borrowing involved whatsoever, and you aren't giving up any ownership. Because there are no interest rates attached and no investors demanding a cut of your hard work, it's almost always the cheapest, safest funding method available. It's basically the financial holy grail of scaling, growing using your own momentum.
So what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, first we have retained profits. This is the money left over after all your expenses are paid, which you actively choose to plunge right back into the business rather than taking out as a personal bonus. Second, it's cash from selling old equipment. Let's say you're upgrading your delivery vans. You sell the old ones to fund the down payment on the new ones. It perfectly shows how a smart, resourceful business constantly uses what it already has to fuel its very next step.
But when internal funds just aren't enough from major moves, we enter the territory of bank loans, borrowing capital.
Bank loans are incredibly powerful tools for buying expensive equipment or funding massive expansions. However, we really need to ground ourselves in a very stark reality here. I want you to let this sink in. Loans must be repaid with interest, whether the business makes a profit or not. This isn't some flexible partnership. This is a strict, legally binding obligation. The bank is not taking a risk on your success in the same way you are. They absolutely expect their money back, on time, with a premium.
To put that into perspective, imagine a fantastic, highly profitable month. Awesome, right? Well, the bank wants its repayment and its interest. Now imagine a terrible, unprofitable month where sales dry up entirely. Guess what? The interest is still absolutely due. Debt introduces a rigid, unforgiving fixed cost into your business model. It can act as rocket fuel if things are going great, but it can be an incredibly heavy anchor dragging you under if your cash flow suddenly tightens.
So what if you need massive amounts of capital to scale, but you want to avoid the dangers of debt? That brings us to our next stage, equity.
investors and shareholders.
And this brilliantly illustrates the two main avenues of equity financing based on exactly where you are in your journey. Venture capital primarily targets startups with massive disruptive ideas. These investors provide huge funding, trading their cash for a significant share of the company with the pure hope that the business explodes in value later. On the flip side, ordinary shares are typically used by large, already established companies. They sell part ownership to the public or institutional investors. And the return for those investors? Well, they often receive dividends, which is a share of the ongoing profits if the company performs well. So two different stages, two different strategies, but both rely on the exact same fundamental mechanic.
And that fundamental mechanic, the absolute golden rule of equity financing, is this. Investors provide funding in exchange for a share of the company. You are literally slicing up your pie and handing out pieces. The logic here is simple but profound. You're sacrificing a portion of your ownership and potentially some of your control to secure the financial backing needed to make the entire pie exponentially larger. I mean, you'd much rather own 50% of a billion-dollar company than 100% of a company that went bankrupt because it just couldn't afford to grow, right?
And that brings us to our final stage, choosing your financing path.
We have journeyed through the entire spectrum today. We started with the immense risk and total control of the owner's savings. We looked at the brilliant, cost-effective momentum of internal finance. We navigated the strict, high-stakes reality of bank loans. And finally, we explored the massive scaling power of giving up ownership through venture capital and ordinary shares. As you can see, every single one of these 5 sources of finance comes with its own unique advantages and incredibly specific disadvantages. There really is no single correct answer. There's only the right answer for your specific situation at your specific stage of growth.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought, bringing it all the way back to where we started. Think about that dream business you imagined earlier. Knowing what you know now about risk, control, interest, and ownership, which path would you choose to bring it to life? Would you bootstrap it yourself, brave the bank, or pitch a venture capitalist? The architecture of your business capital is entirely in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a powerful new perspective on how growth actually happens. Keep learning, keep building, and I'll catch you next time.